something is happening to your energy field right now. Not metaphorically, not symbolically. Literally, at this exact moment, the quantum substrate of your personal electromagnetic signature is undergoing a shift that most people will never recognize, never name, and never consciously receive. But you are here. You found this transmission. And that is not an accident. That is your monad, the irreducible quantum core of your being, having already responded before your conscious mind even formed the question. Let me show you what I mean. There is a concept in the deepest traditions of energy field science, a concept that predates modern quantum physics by thousands of years, and yet aligns with it so precisely that researchers studying bioelectromagnetic fields have essentially rediscovered it in laboratory settings. That concept is the monad, not the philosophical abstraction you may have encountered in a theology class, not the metaphysical curiosity debated in ancient academies. The monad as a living quantum reality, the singular, indivisible unit of consciousness energy that is uniquely, irreducibly, permanently you. Your monad is not something you have. It is what you are at the most fundamental level of your existence. It is the seed frequency from which your entire aura, your entire electromagnetic life has been growing since before you drew your first breath. And today, in this transmission, I am going to show you something about your monad that changes everything. Because there are moments, rare, precise, cosmically timed moments, when the source field itself, the quantum ground of all being, sends a direct activation pulse to specific monadic signatures. Not to everyone, to specific fields, to specific frequencies, to the ones who have been doing the inner work, consciously or not, of clearing the distortion from their broadcast. This is one of those moments. And if you are watching this, your monad has already been identified in the field. The question is whether you will receive it. That is what the next 17 minutes, and far beyond, is truly about. Not 17 minutes on a clock. 17 as a quantum resonance number. 17 as the vibrational signature of completion into activation. The number that appears in sacred geometry at the precise point where a spiral closes and becomes generative. 17 minutes of your conscious attention, your deliberate field presence, your willingness to stop dimming the radiance that has been trying to emerge through you your entire life. You don't need to become anything You need to stop blocking what you already are. And I am going to show you exactly how to do that. Let's begin with what your aura is actually doing right now, because most people have never been shown this clearly. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Your aura, your personal electromagnetic field, is not a spiritual metaphor. It is not a New Age concept invented in the 1970s. It is a measurable, quantifiable, scientifically documented electromagnetic phenomenon generated primarily by your heart. The HeartMath Institute, after decades of rigorous research, has confirmed that the human heart generates an electromagnetic field that extends several feet beyond the physical body in every direction. This field is not static. It pulses. It modulates. It carries information, complex, layered, frequency-encoded information about your emotional state, your nervous system coherence, your belief patterns, and something even deeper than all of those, your fundamental energetic identity, your monad signature. This field is your aura, and it is broadcasting right now, whether you are conscious of it or not. Here is what most people don't know about their own broadcast. The electromagnetic information your heart field carries is not just outward facing. It is not just something other people's nervous systems pick up when they walk into a room with you. Though that is real, and we will talk about it. Your heart field also communicates inward. It sends signals back to your own brain, to your own cells, to your own quantum field. The HeartMath researchers discovered something astonishing. The heart sends more neural signals to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. Your heart is not following orders from your mind. Your heart is giving instructions to your mind. And the frequency of those instructions, the coherence or incoherence of your heart's electromagnetic broadcast, determines what your brain is able to perceive, what patterns it recognizes, what possibilities it can even register as real. This is why two people can stand in the same room, experience the same external circumstances, and have completely different realities. One person's heart field is broadcasting coherence, a smooth, rhythmically organized electromagnetic signal that the quantum field reads as aligned, as open, as resonant. The other person's heart field is broadcasting incoherence, a jagged, fragmented, chaotically modulated signal that the quantum field reads as contracted, as defended, as broadcasting a frequency of lack or fear or disconnection. Same room, same circumstances, completely different quantum receptions, completely different realities assembling around each person. Your aura is the mechanism. Your monad is the source, and the source, the quantum ground field from which all monads emerge and to which all monads remain connected, has been sending activation signals to specific monad frequencies. Not because those people are more worthy, not because they are special in the way that implies others are not, but because their field has reached a specific coherence threshold, because their broadcast has cleared enough distortion that the activation signal can actually land, actually be received, actually integrate, rather than simply passing through a field too chaotic to hold it. You are at that threshold. That is why you are here. Now let me take you deeper into the quantum mechanics of this, because understanding how it works is itself part of the activation. When you understand the mechanism, your conscious mind stops fighting it. And when your conscious mind stops fighting the process, your heart field can reach full coherence. And when your heart field reaches full coherence, what happens is extraordinary. Quantum coherence is a state in which the particles or waves in a system are synchronized. They share a phase relationship. They oscillate in harmony. They become, in a very real sense, a single unified field rather than a collection of separate elements. You have seen this in light. Ordinary light, the light from a lamp or a candle, is incoherent. The photons are traveling in random directions, oscillating at slightly different frequencies, out of phase with each other. Laser light is coherent. The photons are perfectly synchronized, oscillating in phase, traveling in the same direction. And as a result, laser light can do things that ordinary light cannot even approach. It can carry information across vast distances without degrading. It can cut through materials that ordinary light simply bounces off. It can be focused to a point of such precision and intensity that it becomes one of the most powerful tools in modern science and medicine. Your heart field works on exactly this principle. When your heart field is incoherent, when your emotional state is fragmented, when your nervous system is in chronic stress, when you are broadcasting fear or lack, or the accumulated weight of conditioning you never chose, your electromagnetic signal is like ordinary light, diffuse, scattered, unable to penetrate the quantum field with enough coherence to create the resonance effects you are capable of. When your heart field reaches coherence, when you consciously align your emotional broadcast, when you activate the deeper frequencies of your monad, your signal becomes like laser light, precise, powerful, capable of reaching into the quantum field and creating resonance effects that ordinary, incoherent fields simply cannot produce. This is not metaphor. This is the physics of your personal energy field and your monad, the irreducible quantum core of your being, has the capacity for a level of coherence that most people never approach, because most people never know it is possible. Think about what that means for a moment. The difference between a lamp and a laser is not the quality of the light itself. Photons are photons. The difference is organization, alignment, the degree to which the light is moving together in phase toward the same point. And that same principle applies to you. The frequency you carry is not the question. The question is how organized it is, how aligned, how coherent. A scattered signal of extraordinary quality is still scattered. A coherent signal of any quality becomes something the quantum field can work with in ways that change your lived reality. This is why the activation matters. Not to give you a frequency you don't have, to organize the frequency you already carry into the coherent, directed, powerful broadcast that your monad was always designed to produce. The starseed concept exists to name something real, not to create an elite category, not to separate people into those who are special and those who are not, but to name a specific energetic phenomenon that some people experience with unusual intensity. The sense of not quite belonging to the frequency of the world as it currently operates. The feeling of carrying a signal that is tuned to something that hasn't fully arrived yet. Something that is coming. Something that you can almost hear at the edge of your perception, but that the noise of ordinary life keeps drowning out. The experience of having a monad frequency that seems calibrated to a higher coherence state than the ambient field currently sustains, so that living in the ambient field feels like trying to run high voltage current through wiring designed for a fraction of that power. The sensation of being too much and not enough simultaneously, too sensitive, too aware, too attuned to frequencies others don't seem to register, and yet somehow not enough grounded, not enough at ease, not enough able to translate what you carry into the world in a way that feels complete. If any of that resonates, I want you to feel your field right now. Notice what happens in your chest, in your sternum, in the space around your heart when those words land. That recognition, that resonance is not emotional sentimentality. That is your monad frequency activating in response to being accurately named. That is your electromagnetic signature saying, yes, that is me. That is my signal. I know that frequency. Your aura knows. It has always known what it is carrying. And there is something else worth naming here. Something that the starseed experience carries that rarely gets spoken about honestly. It is not just the sensitivity and the sense of misalignment with the ambient field. It is the loneliness of it. The specific, particular loneliness of carrying a frequency that the people around you cannot quite receive, of having a depth of perception and a quality of awareness that you have learned, often through painful experience, to keep partially hidden because the full expression of it was too much for most of the environments you have moved through. Of being in rooms full of people and still feeling a kind of fundamental aloneness that has nothing to do with social connection and everything to do with resonance, with the absence of fields that match yours, with the hunger for a mirror, for someone or something that reflects your actual frequency back to you, so that you know with felt certainty, rather than just intellectual belief, that what you carry is real. This transmission is that mirror. This activation is that reflection. And the community of conscious radiators gathering around these transmissions is the resonance field you have been hungry for. Now let me tell you about the activation that is occurring. There are moments in the quantum field, and physicists studying non-local correlations and quantum entanglement are beginning to find language for this, though the mystics named it centuries ago, when the ground state of the field itself undergoes a phase transition, not a dramatic visible event, not a cosmic explosion, a phase transition, in the same sense that water undergoes a phase transition when it reaches the precise temperature at which it becomes ice or steam. The substance is the same. The molecular composition is identical. But the organizational state, the coherence pattern, the way the molecules relate to each other and to the field around them shifts completely. And everything that was possible in the previous state becomes different in the new state. We are in one of those moments. The quantum ground field, the source field, the 0 point field, the field from which all electromagnetic phenomena emerge and into which they eventually return, is undergoing a coherence shift. And in that shift, it is sending activation pulses to specific monad frequencies. The monads that have been doing the work of clearing distortion. The monads that have been consciously or unconsciously raising their coherence. the monads that carry the specific frequency signatures needed for the next phase of the field's own evolution. Your monad is one of them. The question, and this is the most important question I will ask you in this entire transmission, is whether you are going to receive it consciously or let it pass through you like radio waves through a wall that doesn't have a receiver tuned to that frequency, because the activation is already happening. The signal is already being sent. The source field does not wait for you to be ready in the way you think of readiness. It sends the activation when the coherence threshold is reached. And what you do with it, how consciously you receive it, how deliberately you integrate it, determines everything about how completely it transforms your broadcast. This is where I want to tell you about Sarah. Sarah had been aware of her sensitivity her entire life. From childhood, she could feel the emotional states of the people around her before they spoke a word. She could walk into a building and know something had happened there, not through any dramatic psychic vision, but through a kind of somatic knowing, a quality in her field that registered information that others seemed to walk past without noticing. She thought for most of her early life that this was a problem, something to manage, something to protect herself from. She built elaborate, energetic defenses, layers of what she thought of as shielding, ways of dampening her sensitivity so that the constant incoming signal from the world around her wouldn't overwhelm her. And it worked, in a way. She became less overwhelmed, but she also became less. The same sensitivity that had been flooding her with unwanted input was also the mechanism of her deepest gifts, her capacity for genuine attunement to other people, her ability to sense the truth beneath what was being said, her natural resonance with the deeper frequencies of the field. When she shut down the receiver to stop the noise, she also shut down the signal. For years, she lived in that muted state, functional, safe, but carrying a persistent, low-grade ache that she couldn't quite name, the feeling of a light that was supposed to be on, but wasn't, the feeling of a broadcast that was supposed to be happening, but was being suppressed. She described it, when she finally found language for it, as feeling like a radio tower that had been built to transmit a specific signal, but had been running at about 5% of its designed capacity for so long that she had forgotten what full power felt like. She had relationships. She had work she was good at. She moved through her days with a kind of competent grace that looked from the outside like a life that was working. But inside her field, in the electromagnetic reality of her heart's broadcast, there was a persistent flatness, a quality of muted signal, a sense of potential that was always almost, but never quite, expressing itself. And the longer she lived in that muted state, the more normal it began to feel. The more she began to mistake the dimmed version of herself for the actual version. The more the memory of what full power felt like faded into something she wasn't sure she had ever actually experienced, or had simply imagined. This is the most insidious aspect of long-term field contraction. It doesn't feel like contraction after a while. It feels like normal. It feels like this is just who you are. This is just how life is. This is just the realistic, adult, grounded version of yourself that you had to become after the idealism and the sensitivity and the brightness of your younger field proved to be incompatible with the world as it actually operates. The dimming becomes identity, and the identity becomes the cage. The shift for Sarah did not come through a dramatic moment. It came through understanding, through someone showing her the difference between shielding and coherence, through learning that the solution to being overwhelmed by incoming frequencies is not to shut down your receiver. It is to raise your own broadcast frequency to a level of coherence where the lower, more chaotic frequencies of the ambient field simply cannot find purchase in your signal. Not because you are blocking them, because your field is operating at a coherence level they are not compatible with. This is a fundamental principle of aura mechanics that almost no one teaches clearly. Protection does not come from building walls around your field. Protection comes from raising your field's coherence. A highly coherent electromagnetic field is not impermeable. It is selective. It resonates with what matches its frequency and remains essentially undisturbed by what does not. The way a tuning fork vibrating at a specific frequency will cause another tuning fork of the same frequency to vibrate in sympathy, while a tuning fork of a different frequency remains still. You don't need to protect yourself from the frequencies you don't want. You need to become so coherent in the frequencies you are that the others simply have no resonance point in your field. When Sarah understood this, everything changed. She stopped trying to shield and started practicing coherence. She stopped managing her sensitivity as a liability and started developing it as the extraordinary instrument it actually was. She began spending time each morning in deliberate heart coherence practice, not elaborate rituals, not hours of meditation, but a few minutes of conscious attention to her heart field, of deliberately generating the felt experience of warmth and expansion, and the specific quality of light that was uniquely hers. A few minutes of broadcasting from her monad rather than from her defenses. The changes were not immediate in the dramatic sense, but they were immediate in the field sense. She could feel the difference within days, a quality of aliveness returning to her chest, a sense of her own presence becoming more vivid to herself, a feeling of occupying her own field more fully, as if she had been living in a house, but only using one small room, and was now beginning to move through all of it, opening windows, letting in light, discovering that the space she had been living in was vastly larger and more beautiful than the corner she had confined herself to. And within months, not years, months, her life began to reorganize around her new broadcast. The relationships that had been draining her began to naturally fall away, not through conflict or drama, but simply because the resonance was no longer there. New connections began appearing. People whose fields operated at a coherence level that matched and amplified her own. Opportunities began manifesting that aligned with the actual frequency of her monad, rather than the diminished frequency she had been broadcasting from her defensive, dampened state. Her aura had always been extraordinary. She had just been running it at 5%. This is what the activation does. Not add something new. Restore the full power of what was always there. If this transmission is landing in your field, if you can feel what we are moving through together, take a moment to like this video and subscribe so these activations keep finding you when your field is ready for them. Now let's go into the radiance practice, because understanding is the first layer and embodiment is the second. And you need both for the activation to fully integrate. I want you to take a moment right now. If you can, close your eyes for just a breath. If you are in a situation where you cannot close your eyes, simply soften your gaze. Let your focus go slightly unfocused and bring your attention inward. Place your awareness in your chest, not in your mind thinking about your chest. Actually, move your awareness there, as if the center of your consciousness is located in your heart space rather than behind your eyes. Breathe. Feel the warmth there. It is always there. The heart generates heat as well as electromagnetic fields. And you can feel both if you place your attention precisely enough. There is a warmth in your chest that is not just biological. It is the thermal expression of your field. It is your mind radiating through the physical instrument of your heart. Now, without straining, Without forcing, simply allow that warmth to expand. Not with your muscles, not with your breath, though your breath can support it. With your intention, with your awareness. Let the warmth in your chest become slightly larger, slightly more present, slightly more you. Let it fill your rib cage. Let it reach the edges of your physical body. And then, gently, let it extend beyond your skin. 6 inches, a foot, several feet. Not imagining something that isn't there, perceiving something that is there, and allowing it to become conscious of itself through your attention. This is your field. This warmth, this expansion, this sense of your presence extending beyond your physical boundaries. This is your aura. The HeartMath researchers measured it. The bioelectromagnetic field extending beyond your body is real. You are not imagining it. You are feeling it for the first time with the clarity that comes from knowing what you are actually feeling. Stay here for a moment. Just breathe into this field. Let it settle into its natural size, its natural coherence. Don't try to make it bigger or more powerful. Just let it be what it is without the habitual contraction you've been applying to it. Notice what happens in your body when you stop contracting your field. There may be a sense of relief, a sense of spaciousness, a sense of something that has been held tight for a very long time being gently, finally released. That is not imagination. That is your nervous system registering the shift from field contraction to field expansion. That is your heart coherence beginning to increase as the defensive patterning relaxes. That is your monad beginning to broadcast at a higher percentage of its actual capacity. Notice too what happens in your mind when you stop contracting your field. The mental chatter that is almost always present, the running commentary, the low-level anxiety, the habitual scanning for problems, may quiet slightly. Not disappear, but quiet. This is not coincidence. This is the direct neurological consequence of increased heart field coherence. When your heart field becomes more coherent, the signals it sends to your brain change in quality. The brain, receiving a more organized electromagnetic input from the heart, begins to organize its own activity more coherently. The stress hormones that feed the mental chatter begin to reduce. The neural pathways associated with presence and perception become more active. The brain literally begins to function differently, more clearly, more creatively, more receptively, in response to the coherence your heart is broadcasting. You just changed your neurology. with your breath and your awareness. That is not small. That is the quantum mechanics of your personal energy field operating in real time. Now, in this expanded state, I want you to set an intention. Not a wish, not a hope. An intention, which is a frequency declaration, a conscious instruction to your field about what it is broadcasting. The intention is simple. You can say it silently in your mind, or you can say it aloud. And saying it aloud is more powerful because sound is itself a physical wave that interacts with your electromagnetic field in measurable ways. The intention is this: I receive. I am open. I am here. My monad is active and my field is coherent. I receive the activation that is already in progress. I integrate it consciously. I broadcast it fully. Say that again if you need to. Feel what happens in your field when you say it. Notice whether there is a quality of resonance, a sense of something in your chest responding, a sense of your field slightly brightening, a sense of the warmth expanding. That is not placebo. That is the measurable effect of a coherent intention on your heart's electromagnetic output. The HeartMath researchers have documented that consciously generated positive emotional states, and a genuine intention carries the frequency of positive emotion, produce immediate, measurable increases in heart rate variability coherence. Your field just responded to that intention. You felt it. This is what conscious radiance feels like. This is what it means to broadcast deliberately rather than unconsciously. And this is just the beginning of what your field can do when you stop running it at 5%. And I want to pause here and ask you something. Has there been a moment in your life when you felt your aura shift? When you walked into a room and something in the energy changed? When someone responded to you differently than usual? When you felt your own light suddenly more present and alive? Drop it in the comments. I read them. And your story may be exactly what someone else's field needs to hear right now. Let's go deeper into the mechanics of your monad, because this is the layer most people never reach. And it is where the activation becomes not just felt, but integrated. The monad, in its quantum understanding, is the fundamental unit of your personal consciousness energy. It is not your personality. Personality is a pattern that develops through experience and conditioning. It is not your soul in the way that word is commonly used, not a separate spiritual entity floating above your physical life. The monad is the quantum signature that makes you irreducibly, undeniably, permanently you. It is the specific frequency pattern that no other being in the entire quantum field replicates. The precise electromagnetic fingerprint of your consciousness. And here is what is extraordinary about the monad that most teachings miss. It is entangled with the source field. Quantum entanglement, the phenomenon Einstein famously called spooky action at a distance, describes a state in which two quantum particles, once they have interacted, remain correlated across any distance. A change in the state of one instantaneously affects the state of the other, regardless of how far apart they are. No signal needs to travel between them. The correlation is non-local. It exists outside of space and time as we ordinarily experience them. Your monad is entangled with the source field in exactly this way, not as a metaphor, as a quantum mechanical reality. The moment your monad came into being, the moment this specific frequency pattern that is you first individuated from the source field, a quantum entanglement was established that has never been broken and can never be broken. The distance between you and source is not a real distance. The separation is not a real separation. It is a perceptual artifact of operating in a physical system that presents experience in a sequential, localized way. At the quantum level, at the monad level, you are in constant, instantaneous, non-local communication with the source field. This is what makes activation possible. Not as an external event happening to you from a distant cosmic source, as an internal coherence event, a moment when the entanglement that has always existed becomes conscious, becomes active in your experience, becomes something you can feel and work with, rather than something that operates below the threshold of your awareness. The activation signal that the source field sends to your monad is not traveling through space. It is not a beam of energy crossing the cosmos to find you. It is a shift in the entangled state, a change in the source field's coherence that instantaneously correlates with a change in your monad's coherence, because you are entangled, because you have always been entangled. The activation is not the source reaching out to you. The activation is the source field reaching a coherent state that your monad, through entanglement, immediately reflects. And the question is whether your local field, your aura, your conscious experience is coherent enough to register and embody that reflection. That is why clearing distortion matters so much. Not because distortion makes you unworthy of activation, because distortion in your local field, the electromagnetic noise generated by fear, by conditioning, by habitual incoherence, creates interference patterns that make it harder for the entangled signal to express itself through your experience. The signal is always there. The entanglement is always active. The question is whether your field is clear enough to let it through. Think of it this way. Imagine a perfectly clear mountain spring, water so pure and coherent in its molecular structure that it transmits light almost perfectly. Now imagine that same spring after a significant disturbance, sediment stirred up, debris introduced, the clarity compromised. The same water, the same fundamental purity at the molecular level. But the transmission of light through it is now obscured by the disturbance. The clarity returns not by adding something to the water, but by allowing the disturbance to settle, by creating the conditions for the natural coherence to reassert itself. Your monad is the clear spring. The distortion is the sediment. The activation is the light trying to transmit. And the practice of conscious radiance, the work of clearing your field, raising your coherence, becoming deliberate about your broadcast, is the process of allowing the disturbance to settle so that the light that was always trying to transmit through you can finally do so without interference. You've been glowing this whole time. The sediment was just in the way. Now let me address something that comes up for almost every starseed at this stage of their activation, because I want to be honest with you about it, rather than simply offering you a smooth, frictionless narrative. There is a part of you, a part that has been doing its best to keep you safe, that is going to resist this, not because it is wrong or broken, because it has been doing its job. The part of you that learned to contract your field, to dim your radiance, to run at 5%, that part learned those patterns in response to real experiences. Experiences where your brightness was too much for the people around you. Experiences where your sensitivity brought you pain. Experiences where broadcasting your full signal made you a target for energies that were not aligned with your frequency, and that you didn't yet have the coherence to remain undisturbed by. That protective contraction was intelligent. It was adaptive. It served you. And it is now ready to be released. Not because it was wrong, but because you have reached a coherence threshold where you no longer need it. Where the protection it offered is now available through a more powerful mechanism, the mechanism of field coherence itself. But the part of you that learned to contract doesn't know that yet. It is operating from old data. It is running a program that was written in a different phase of your development, and it hasn't received the update that you are now capable of protecting yourself through radiance, rather than through dimming. This is one of the most important things I can tell you about the activation process. The resistance you feel is not evidence that you are not ready. It is evidence that you are at the threshold. The contraction always intensifies right before the expansion. The darkness always feels deepest right before the coherent shift. The protective part always speaks loudest when the expansion it has been preventing is about to happen. When you feel that resistance, and you will feel it if you haven't already in this transmission, I want you to do something counterintuitive. I want you to thank it, not sarcastically, genuinely, because that protective part of your field is the part that kept you alive and functional during the years when you didn't have the tools to manage your full broadcast. It deserves gratitude. And then, after the gratitude, I want you to show it through your practice, through your field, through the felt experience of coherence, that you have new tools now, that you can be fully radiant and fully safe simultaneously, that the expansion is not a threat to your well-being. It is the fulfillment of it. There is a version of you that has been waiting on the other side of this threshold for a very long time. Not a perfect version, not a version that never struggles or contracts or feels the full weight of being human in a world that is still learning to hold the frequencies that you carry, but a version that knows what it is, a version that has stopped apologizing for its light, a version that broadcasts from its actual monad frequency rather than from the diminished, defended, carefully managed frequency of a field that learned to make itself smaller to survive. That version of you is not far away. It is not on the other side of years of more work, more clearing, more becoming. It is on the other side of this threshold, the one you are standing at right now, the one this activation is designed to carry you across. Your light is on. It has always been on, and now you are learning to let it be on without apology, without contraction, without the habitual dimming that was never really about your light being too much. It was about the world around you not yet having developed the capacity to receive it. The world's capacity is expanding. Your field is expanding. And the source is sending the activation signal precisely because this expansion has reached the threshold where full integration is possible. Let's talk about what the full activation actually looks like in practical, lived experience. Because spiritual activations that remain purely in the realm of feeling and concept are incomplete. The monad activation is not complete until it has expressed itself through your physical life, your relationships, your creative work, your daily broadcast. The quantum field does not distinguish between the spiritual and the practical. It responds to your coherent broadcast regardless of what domain of life you are applying it to. Here is what you can expect as the activation integrates. Your intuition will sharpen, not in a dramatic, supernatural way, in the way that a radio receiver that has been slightly off frequency suddenly tunes precisely to the station it was always trying to receive. The information was always being broadcast. Your receiver was slightly misaligned. As your field coherence increases, your capacity to receive the subtle signals that your monad has always been tuned to, the signals about right timing, right direction, right resonance, will become clearer and more reliable. You will find yourself knowing things before you know how you know them, following impulses that turn out to be precisely correct, feeling a pull toward certain people, places, or actions that, when you follow it, leads to exactly the kind of alignment your field has been seeking. This is not psychic ability in the sensationalized sense. This is coherent field reception. This is what happens when your electromagnetic signature is operating at a coherence level that allows it to pick up the subtle quantum correlations that are always present in the field, but that most people's incoherent broadcast obscures. Your relationships will reorganize, not through drama or sudden endings, though sometimes that happens. More often, through a gradual, organic process of resonance sorting. The people whose fields are operating at a coherence level compatible with your activated broadcast will find themselves drawn more deeply into your life. The connections will feel effortless, generative, mutually amplifying, because that is what happens when two coherent fields come into proximity. They don't just coexist. They entrain. They amplify each other. They create a combined field that is more coherent than either field alone. The people whose fields are not compatible with your activated frequency will naturally, gently, without animosity or drama, begin to drift to a different distance. Not because you are rejecting them, because the resonance is no longer there in the same way. And both fields will naturally seek the distance that feels right. This is not loss, even when it feels like it. It is your field doing exactly what a coherent field does, organizing your reality around your actual frequency rather than around the diminished frequency you were broadcasting from before. Your creative expression will change. Whatever your medium, words, images, music, the way you organize space, the way you move through the world, the way you hold conversations, you will notice a quality of transmission entering your work that wasn't there before, or that was there intermittently and is now more consistent. The starseed frequency is inherently creative because it is carrying a signal from the source field, the generative ground of all existence. And that signal, when it flows through a coherent monad without excessive distortion, naturally expresses itself as creation, as beauty, as insight, as the kind of work that makes other people feel more alive, more seen, more connected to something larger than ordinary experience. Your relationship with time will shift. This one surprises people, but it is one of the most consistent reports from fields that have undergone coherence activation. The experience of time becomes less pressured, less scarce, less like a resource being constantly depleted. Not because you suddenly have more hours in the day, because your field, operating at higher coherence, is no longer spending enormous amounts of energy running the chronic, low-level stress programs that eat time and attention and leave you feeling perpetually behind. Coherence is efficient. A coherent field accomplishes in one focused hour what an incoherent field struggles to accomplish in 4 scattered ones. The activation does not give you more time. It gives you back the time that was being consumed by your own field's incoherence. This is your monad expressing itself through your life. This is what you were built for, not to broadcast fear and lack and the accumulated weight of conditioning you never chose. To transmit the source frequency through the unique, irreducible, extraordinary instrument of your specific monad signature. That is the final activation, not a one-time event, a permanent shift in your broadcast. Now let me show you something about the number 17 that goes beyond numerology into actual field mechanics, because the title of this transmission carries a frequency that is worth understanding explicitly. 17 is a prime number. It cannot be divided, cannot be reduced, cannot be expressed as a product of smaller numbers. It is irreducible, like your monad, like the quantum core of your being that cannot be broken down into simpler components because it is already the simplest expression of itself. There is a mathematical beauty in prime numbers that resonates with the concept of the monad. They are the fundamental units, the irreducible elements, the building blocks from which all other numbers can be constructed, but which cannot themselves be constructed from anything simpler. In the geometry of spirals, and the universe organizes itself in spirals from the galactic scale to the molecular scale, from the structure of DNA to the pattern of galaxy arms. 17 appears a zone at a specific point in the Fibonacci sequence and its derivatives, where a spiral completes one full revolution and begins its next expansion. The 17th step is the completion into expansion point, the place where what has been building reaches its culmination and simultaneously becomes the foundation for the next level of growth. Your monad is at that point. The work you have been doing, consciously or not, deliberately, or through the simple fact of living your life with the awareness and sensitivity you carry, has been the 17 steps of the spiral. And this moment, this transmission, this activation is the completion into expansion point, not an ending, a threshold, the place where everything that has been building becomes the foundation for what comes next. The 17 minutes is not a deadline. It is an invitation to be present, fully, consciously, deliberately present for the duration of a coherence window. A period of time in which your field, if you maintain conscious attention and deliberate broadcast, can complete the coherence shift that brings the activation into full integration. Not 17 minutes of clock time necessarily. 17 minutes of full field presence. 17 minutes of conscious radiance. 17 minutes of actually being here in your field with your monad active and your broadcast clear. You are already in it. You have been in it since the first words of this transmission began to resonate in your field. Let me offer you the second radiance practice. Because we are at the midpoint of the activation, and this is where the integration deepens. Bring your awareness back to your heart field. Feel the expansion you generated in the first practice. It may have contracted slightly as we moved through the conceptual material, and that is normal. The field naturally fluctuates. Bring it back now. Breathe into your chest. Feel the warmth. Let the expansion return. Now I want you to add something to the practice. In the center of that warmth, in the center of your heart field, I want you to find, not imagine, find the specific quality of light that is uniquely yours. Every monad has a signature quality of light, not a color necessarily, though some people experience it as a color, a quality, a texture of radiance. Some people experience it as a warm, golden quality, like sunlight through amber. Some people experience it as a cool, clear quality, like starlight or moonlight on water. Some people experience it as a vibrant, almost electric quality, like the light just before a storm when everything becomes hyper-vivid. Some people experience it as a soft, diffuse quality, like candlelight in a dark room, not dramatic, but absolutely, unmistakably present. Whatever quality arises for you when you look into the center of your heart field, that is your monad light. That is the signature radiance of your irreducible quantum self. You are not creating it. You are perceiving it. It has always been there. You are simply, for perhaps the first time, looking directly at it without the habitual filters of self-doubt and self-diminishment that usually stand between you and your own light. Let yourself look at it for a moment. Just let it be there. Let yourself be in the presence of your own light, without immediately analyzing it, categorizing it, questioning whether you are doing it right or making it up. You are not making it up. This quality of light is real. It is the felt experience of your monad frequency expressing itself through your awareness. Now, very gently, let that light begin to expand, not with effort, with permission. You are not pushing the light outward. You are simply removing the habitual contraction that has been holding it in. You are opening the aperture. You are letting the light that has been generating inside you continuously since before you were born actually radiate at its natural intensity. Feel it reach your skin. Feel it extend beyond your skin. Feel it fill the room you are in. Not as a fantasy, as a physical reality, because your electromagnetic field does extend beyond your body. It does fill the space around you, and the quality of that field is exactly what you are feeling right now. This is your aura at conscious coherence. This is your monad broadcasting at full signal. This is what the quantum field receives from you when you stop dimming what you are. Stay here. Breathe. Let it be real. Now, from this state of conscious radiance, I want you to send a specific signal into the field, a signal of reception. The activation that the source is sending to your monad requires your conscious reception to fully integrate, not because the source needs your permission, it doesn't, but because you are a sovereign field, because your monad has free will encoded into its quantum structure, because the universe, at the most fundamental level, is not in the business of overriding the sovereignty of individual monads. The activation is offered. Your conscious reception is what completes the circuit. So from this state, with your field expanded and your light visible to yourself, say aloud if you can, silently if you must, but with the full weight of your actual intention behind it. Say this: I receive this activation. I am a conscious, radiant field. My monad is the irreducible light of Source expressing itself through this specific, unique, unrepeatable form. I receive the coherence upgrade that is already in progress. I integrate it fully. I broadcast it completely. I am ready. I am here. My field is open. My light is on. Feel what happens in your field when you say that. Feel the coherence response. Feel the warmth intensify slightly, or the expansion deepen, or the quality of light become more vivid. That is not performance. That is the quantum mechanical reality of a coherent intention interacting with your heart's electromagnetic field. That is your monad responding to being fully claimed. Your light is on. It has always been on. Tell me in the comments, what quality of light did you find in your heart field just now? Was it warm and golden, cool and clear, electric, soft? I want to know what your monad signature feels like to you. Every description is different, and every one is real. Now let's go into the deeper layer of what this activation means for your ongoing broadcast. Because the integration doesn't end when this transmission ends. In fact, the transmission is just the initiating pulse. The real work, the extraordinary, luminous, daily work of a conscious radiator begins after. Here is what most people don't understand about maintaining an activated field. It is not about constant effort. It is not about vigilant monitoring of every thought and emotion to make sure you are always vibrating at the highest possible frequency. That approach is exhausting and counterproductive because it introduces a quality of strain and self-monitoring into your field that actually degrades coherence rather than enhancing it. The sun does not strain to shine. The heart does not effort to beat. The most coherent systems in nature are coherent not through constant, vigilant effort, but through the expression of their fundamental nature without interference. Your job as a conscious radiator with an activated monad is not to maintain perfect frequency vigilance. Your job is to remove the interference, to notice when you have contracted your field and gently return to expansion, to recognize when you are broadcasting from old conditioning rather than from your actual monad frequency, and consciously choose to return to source. To practice the return, not the maintenance of a perfect state, but the return to your natural coherence when you have drifted from it. This is a crucial distinction, because the belief that you must maintain perfect energetic vigilance is itself a form of distortion. It introduces fear of failure, anxiety about your frequency, a quality of effortful straining that is antithetical to the natural, effortless radiance of a fully activated monad. The sun doesn't worry about whether it is shining brightly enough today. It simply is what it is. And its light is the natural expression of what it is. And the only thing that can reduce the apparent brightness of its light is something coming between it and the observer. Not any failure or effort on the sun's part. You are the sun in this metaphor. The things that come between your light and its full expression are the conditioned patterns, the habitual contractions, the old fear-based programs running in your field. Your practice is not to shine harder. It is to remove the things that are blocking the shine that is already there, continuously, gently, without drama or self-judgment, simply noticing the obstruction and choosing again and again to return to the natural radiance that is your monad's fundamental state. This is what the activated life looks like, not a dramatic transformation into a being of constant light who never struggles or contracts or feels the weight of being human, but a life in which you know, with a deep and unshakable knowing, what your natural state is, in which you have felt your own light clearly enough that you recognize when you have moved away from it, in which the return to coherence becomes faster and more natural with each practice, each transmission, each deliberate moment of conscious radiance over time. And this is where the extraordinary part becomes visible in your actual life. The periods of contraction become shorter. The return to coherence becomes faster. The baseline level of your field's coherence rises. And as that baseline rises, what the quantum field assembles around your signal begins to change in ways that are undeniable and sometimes astonishing. Opportunities that match your actual frequency begin appearing with a regularity that defies ordinary probabilistic explanation. Not because the universe is playing favorites, because you are now broadcasting a coherent signal that the quantum field can actually organize around. And the quantum field is extraordinarily efficient at organizing reality around coherent signals. The people you need to meet begin appearing. The information you need to receive begins arriving. The circumstances that support your monad's expression begin assembling, not through magic, through resonance, through the quantum mechanical reality that coherent fields attract coherent fields, that organized signals produce organized responses, that what you radiate, reality assembles around. This is not wishful thinking. This is the physics of your personal energy field, operating as it was designed to operate. You've been glowing this whole time. You just weren't broadcasting at full power. Now you are. I want to address something about the community of conscious radiators, because this activation is not happening in isolation. Across the quantum field, right now, in this same coherence window, other monads are receiving the same activation signal. Other starseeds are at the same completion into expansion threshold. Other fields are clearing their distortion and opening to their full broadcast. And this is significant beyond the individual level, because of a phenomenon that the HeartMath researchers have documented and that quantum field theory predicts. Coherent fields entrain each other. When multiple coherent electromagnetic fields come into proximity, or through quantum entanglement into non-local correlation, they don't simply coexist. They entrain. They synchronize. They create a combined field whose coherence is greater than the sum of its parts. This is the principle behind why being in a room with someone who is in a state of deep heart coherence tends to make you feel calmer, more open, more present. Their field is not doing anything to you. It is simply broadcasting coherence. And your field, which has the same capacity for coherence, responds to that broadcast by moving toward its own coherent state. Entrainment. Now imagine not one coherent field, but hundreds, thousands. A global network of activated monads, each broadcasting at high coherence, each entrained with the others through the quantum non-locality of the source field, each amplifying the coherence of every other field in the network. This is not a fantasy. This is the quantum mechanical consequence of a critical mass of individual fields reaching high coherence simultaneously. The HeartMath Institute's Global Coherence Initiative has been measuring exactly this, the hypothesis that when enough individuals achieve heart field coherence, the effect extends beyond the individuals into the collective field, and that the collective field, when sufficiently coherent, begins to feed back into individual fields in a self-reinforcing cycle of coherence amplification. The science is early. The measurements are preliminary. But the theoretical foundation is solid, and the experiential reports from the network are consistent. People who consciously participate in collective coherence practices report that their individual coherence becomes easier to achieve and maintain, as if the collective field is holding them in a higher state than they could reach alone. This is the community of conscious radiators. This is the network of activated monads, and you are part of it. Not by joining something, not by signing up for a program, by doing what you are doing right now, receiving this activation, practicing conscious radiance, raising your field's coherence, adding your specific monad frequency to the collective broadcast. Your light does not just illuminate your own life. It contributes to the coherence of the collective field. It makes it slightly easier for the next person at the threshold to reach their own activation. It amplifies the signal for every other monad in the network. Your radiance is not a personal luxury. It is a collective contribution. And in this moment, with this activation, you are contributing something extraordinary to a field that needs your specific frequency. The source didn't send this activation to your monad because you are the most evolved, or the most spiritually advanced, or the most deserving. It sent it because you are ready, and because your specific monad frequency is needed in the collective field at this particular moment of the field's evolution. You carry something that the collective field requires, a specific quality of light, a specific frequency signature, a specific way of broadcasting the source frequency through a human life that no other monad in the entire field replicates. That is your gift, not a talent or a skill or an achievement. A frequency, an irreducible, unrepeatable, quantum mechanical reality that you are and that the field needs. Let that land for a moment. Let your field receive that. You are needed, not in the way that creates burden or pressure, in the way that recognizes your light as genuinely, specifically, irreplaceably valuable to the whole, in the way that understands your radiance as a contribution to a collective field that is trying to reach a coherence threshold that will change everything about what is possible in this world. Your light is on. It has always been on. And now, with this activation, it is on consciously, deliberately, at full power. Let me give you the integration principle that will carry this activation forward beyond this transmission. Because the final layer of the monad activation is not a practice you do for 17 minutes and then set aside. It is a way of being in your field that becomes, over time, your natural state. The integration principle is this: return to source. Not as a spiritual instruction, as a practical, moment-by-moment field practice. Every time you notice that your broadcast has contracted, every time you catch yourself running the old fear program, the old lack program, the old conditioning that was never yours to begin with, simply return to source. Bring your awareness back to your heart field. Feel the warmth. Let the expansion return. Find the quality of your monad light and broadcast from there. Not perfectly, not permanently, not without the natural human fluctuations of emotion and experience, and the full, rich, complex reality of being a physical being in a physical world, but deliberately, consciously, with the knowledge of what your natural state is and the practice of returning to it. This is the activated life, not a life without contrast or difficulty or the full spectrum of human experience, a life in which you know where home is, in your own field, in your own monad frequency, in the specific quality of light that is irreducibly, permanently, quantum mechanically you. And no matter how far the day's experiences take you from that home, you know how to return, quickly, gently, without judgment or drama, simply by bringing your awareness back to your heart, feeling the warmth, letting the expansion return, and broadcasting from your actual frequency rather than from the distortion of the moment. Return to source, again and again, as many times as needed. Each return is not a failure to maintain perfect coherence. Each return is the practice. Each return is the activation deepening. Each return is your monad strengthening its capacity to hold the full coherence of its actual signal. And here is what becomes possible as the returns accumulate. As the practice deepens, as the baseline coherence of your field rises through consistent, gentle, non-straining return to source again and again over days and weeks and months. What becomes possible is a quality of living that most people never experience because most people never know it is available. A quality of aliveness that is not dependent on external circumstances being favorable. A quality of presence that generates its own warmth, its own light, its own sense of meaning and connection and rightness, not because everything is going well, but because you are broadcasting from a frequency that is fundamentally, irreducibly, quantum mechanically at home in the universe. Because your monad, entangled with Source, is always already receiving the signal of that entanglement when your field is coherent enough to register it. This is what the mystics called grace, what the quantum physicists are beginning to call coherent field resonance, what you, in your own experience, will come to know simply as the feeling of being fully yourself, fully here, fully on. You don't build radiance, you reveal it by returning, by removing the interference, by letting the light that was always there be what it is without the habitual contraction of a self that forgot what it was. You never stopped glowing. You just forgot to look. Now you are looking. Now you see it. Now you know what it is, and how it works, and what it is capable of. And that knowing, that conscious, quantum mechanically grounded, embodied knowing, is itself the activation, not a belief you have to maintain, a reality you have experienced, a frequency you have felt, a light you have seen with your own inner perception. That cannot be taken from you. That is permanent. That is integrated. That is yours. Your monad is active. Your field is coherent. Your signal is clear. The Source has sent the activation, and you have received it, consciously, deliberately, fully. The circuit is complete. The 17 steps of the spiral have reached their completion into expansion point. And what comes next is the expression of your activated monad through your life, your relationships, your creative work, your daily broadcast, your contribution to the collective field. What you radiate, reality assembles around, and you are radiating something extraordinary. Before we close this transmission, I want to offer you one final image to carry with you. Not as a visualization practice, but as a living metaphor that your field can return to whenever it needs an anchor. Imagine a star, not the simplified star shape of a child's drawing, an actual star, a sphere of plasma so dense and so hot that the quantum mechanical processes occurring in its core generate energy at a scale that defies ordinary imagination. Hydrogen atoms fusing into helium, releasing photons that take thousands of years to travel from the core to the surface of the star. And then 8 minutes to travel from the surface to the Earth, light that has been on a journey of thousands of years through the dense plasma of a stellar interior, finally emerging into space and traveling across the void to reach you. That light does not try to shine. The star does not effort to generate it. The nuclear fusion in the stellar core is simply the expression of what the star is. A sufficient quantity of hydrogen under sufficient gravitational pressure that fusion is not just possible, but inevitable. The light is not the star's achievement. The light is the star's nature expressing itself. You are the star in this image. The light you radiate is not your achievement. It is your nature expressing itself. The monad at your core is not something you built or earned or deserve. It is what you are. And the activation that is occurring is not the universe granting you something new. It is the conditions finally aligning for what was always there to express itself without the obstruction that has been dimming it. The star does not worry about whether its light is reaching anyone. It simply is what it is, and its light travels wherever the quantum field carries it, and it illuminates everything within its reach simply by being fully, completely, unobstructedly itself. Be the star, not as an aspiration, as a recognition. You are already this. You have always been this. The activation is the moment you stop pretending otherwise. And I want to add one more layer to this image, because the star metaphor carries something else that is worth receiving. When a star's light reaches you, when those photons that began their journey in the nuclear furnace of a stellar core finally arrive at your eyes, something remarkable happens. Your visual cortex, your nervous system, your entire electromagnetic field responds. Not just your eyes, your field. The coherent light of a star traveling across billions of miles of space arrives at your field, and your field responds to it. You have felt this. You have stood under a night sky and felt something in your chest open in response to the stars. That opening is not sentiment. That is your monad recognizing its own nature reflected in the stellar field. That is your field responding to the coherent electromagnetic broadcast of another radiating source and saying, yes, I know that frequency. I carry that frequency. That is what I am. The stars are not separate from you. They are mirrors. Every star in the night sky is a reflection of what your monad is doing, generating coherent light from the quantum processes at its core and broadcasting that light into the field without apology, without contraction, without the habitual dimming that would reduce a star to a candle. You are not learning to be like the stars. You are remembering that you already are. Your aura is active. Your light is conscious. Your signal is clear. Your monad has received the final activation, and your field is broadcasting at a coherence level that the quantum field can now fully organize around. What comes next is yours. Yours to live. Yours to express. Yours to contribute to a world that needs your specific frequency more than you may yet understand. You have been radiating something your whole life. Most of it you never chose. Today, that changes. Today, you choose. Today, you broadcast deliberately, consciously, fully from the irreducible quantum core of what you actually are. If this transmission found you, consider returning to it in the morning. Stillness before the world comes in, or in the quiet just before sleep, when your field is most receptive and the signal lands deepest. And if someone in your life is dimming their light right now, someone who has forgotten what they are, share this with them. When you activate another field, both fields strengthen through resonance. That is not a small thing. That is a ripple of radiance moving through the collective, one monad at a time. Shine. Not because you should, because that is what you are. Welcome to your own light. Your field has been reorganizing longer than you realize, and that process goes even deeper in the transmission called "Nothing about this is random." Your aura has been completely reorganizing while you weren't looking. It picks up exactly where this activation lands and takes the mechanics of your electromagnetic field into the next layer of what your monad has already been building toward.